Welcome back to the 480 Experience. I'm Jacob Fredericks, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about the Cardinals' loss to the Vikings and how they can get back on track against the Seahawks next week in a big divisional matchup that can really decide the NFC West. I just got done watching the college football playoff rankings. Those were horrible, but I'm sure you'll hear more about that from Trev and Strider in a separate video. So let's just get into it with the Cardinals versus the Vikings. And honestly, I didn't have to take too many stats because the stats for the Cardinals were great. 406 yards on offense, only gave up 273 yards on offense, but they still found themselves losing by 1 point. And it comes down to one stat, and one stat only. They were 1 for 6 in the red zone at scoring touchdowns. One for 6. 5 trips to the red zone that did not end in touchdowns. I mean, Chad Ryland, of course, has a career day, but 5 times in the red zone, that's a recipe for a loss. And I think there's some overreactions with the Cardinals from this week. I mean, the Vikings were a 9-2 team. That's not a bad team to lose to, but that is a bad way to lose. That is a horrible way to llose a football game, and it's a way that the Cardinals have seen to lose in years past. And it was so frustrating. I was actually at the Suns Arena with some of the employees there watching the game, and the reaction was all the same. It's the same old team. It's the same old team, and that's so frustrating because we looked earlier in the season as if we had turned the page, as if finally the Cardinals had something. And I'm not saying that they haven't yet, but this was a huge step back. I think Jonathan Gannon especially is going to want this game back. There's some huge questionable decisions throughout the game. Not going for the touchdown there in the fourth quarter, I think, was a very questionable decision. I disagree with that decision immensely because having a 6-point lead does nothing. That does you nothing, as you saw. Because then if they go down and score, which they were bound to do at some point, the Cardinals defense held them out of the end zone for most of the game. I think they scored 1 touchdown before that, but they were bound to score at some point, and it's so frustrating to see them lose that way. And it's interesting too because the reaction is all negative, of course. But that's interesting about football is that 1 or 2 plays go a different way, and the Cardinals come out on top by a point. You're a few plays away from me celebrating the win. What a win against the 9-2 team. The Cardinals are back, ready to that's the interesting thing about football, and how on 1 or 2 plays, a couple decisions from the coaching staff, a couple decisions from the officials can change a game, but can change really a season. And about the officials, by the way, 10 penalties, 96 yards for the Cardinals. Now, most of those penalties I'm not going to sit here and argue with, but that false start in the fourth quarter, I mean, come on, we've all seen the video. That is clearly not a false start. It's so clear that the Vikings defensive lineman jumps offside and then Tip Redmond moves. That it's so clear, it's clear as day, and you get a false start penalty, and that's another Cardinals drive in the red zone back. And that's what killed the Cardinals in this game was penalties, and that's why they ended up going 1 for 6 in the red zone. And it's such an unfortunate loss, such a heartbreaking loss too. Because that's one of those games where you win that game, you're going to play Seattle this week to take the lead in the NFC West, and now you have to beat Seattle, otherwise your season may be over very quickly. And that's one game, couple plays that changes the season once again for the Cardinals. And so now we're gonna look ahead to that game. Oh, and sorry, one more thing about the Cardinals again versus Vikings. If you have them in 4th and 7, dropping off in a cover 3 zone and leaving Justin Jefferson with the linebacker as the closest guy to him, that's not a good idea. The Cardinals defense was amazing in the game, but come on. I think always in these 4th down situations, you man up and then you double Justin Jefferson. That's what that play should have been. Double Justin Jefferson, let someone else beat you. Let Sam Darnold beat you with his arm. But leaving Justin Jefferson wide, if you have to get 4th and 7, leaving him wide open for a gain of 9 it's just not smart football. I think you have to press cover, give your D line time to get to Darnold, make him make a decision quickly and not without the receiver being able to sit in a wide open zone. And so that play was probably one of the most frustrating. It was kind of at that point where I knew the game was kind of headed, and Aaron Jones ended up finishing it off. So yeah, that was not. I just don't get that. The Cardinals defense was amazing the entire all game, but come on, you cannot leave their best receiver wide open. At least make him make a great catch, but he didn't even do that. And so now we're going to move on to their game against the Seahawks this week. And, I mean, for obvious reasons, this is the biggest game of the season. The Cardinals win, and they are favorites to win the NFC West. They'll have still 2 division games to go against the Rams and the Niners. But the Cardinals lose, and the Seahawks have the clear advantage to win the NFC West. And so this is by far the biggest game. And, I mean, we saw it in the last game against Seattle. The Cardinals were not bad. They held the Seattle offense to 16 points. That's not bad at all. And Geno Smith has not been the Seahawks offense has not been playing their best football. They barely slid by a very bad Jets team. That they're not, and they beat the Cardinals in a game in which the Cardinals really kind of gave them the game. So I don't think Seattle's playing their best football right now, but neither is that Cardinals offense. I mean, there's got to be something figured out. Just when you think they figured out something, like, for example, I complained the week before that Marvin Harrison Jr. had to get involved more. He needed something. They needed to find more ways to get him involved, as they didn't do against Seattle. Get him involved this week, scores a touchdown this week, but then you can't score you can't score 5 times in the red zone. You can't get you can't get 2 more points out of 5 drives in the red zone. That's what's been so frustrating about watching the Cardinals this year. And I know they're still ahead of where they should be in a rebuild, but I mean, these are just like as good as Jonathan Gannon was in our winning streak at these winning situations. I think he's been not quite as bad as good as he was, but he's been quite close, just as bad in these last few weeks. And he's done a great job this season. He's doing a great job with the team, but these last few weeks, I think, have to be on him, on Drew Petzing especially. I'm going to go back to what I said before. I think Drew Petzing should be on the hot seat right now. If the Cardinals cannot score more points and cannot score more touchdowns, they are going to have to find a different answer on the offensive side of the ball. I'm not ready to give up on Kyler Murray yet, but even Kyler would admit this was not his best game against Minnesota. So if he can step up against Seattle if they can just get the ball in the end zone, that's all they have to do. Cardinals had a couple good drives against Seattle, and in turnovers, and then end in field goals. Field goals in this game are not going to win you a football game. Touchdowns are going to win you this football game. If the Cardinals can score 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think they will be perfectly fine and will end up on top in this game against Seattle at home, even though it's more of probably a 50-50 crowd because Seattle fans do travel well. And so that wraps up today's episode of the 480 podcast. I'm Jacob Fredericks, and I'll see you guys next week.